Okay, robber barons and captains of industry. All right, two terms, two phrases we use to describe the four big financial leaders, corporate leaders of the day. All right, this would be J.P. Morgan in finance, Andrew Carnegie in steel, Cornelius Vanderbilt in the railroad, and John D. Rockefeller in oil. All right, so those that refer to them as robber barons are going to say these guys built their wealth on the backs of the poor and disadvantaged. They used crooked business practices. They built these huge monopolies and trusts to control and kill competition. They paid their workers very little and fought to kill union and worker protections. All right, and meanwhile they're making hundreds of millions of dollars while their employees in the world around them fights to survive day by day. Others view them as captains of industry. By building such large empires, they created thousands of jobs and built a new national economy. They also contributed millions to private charities such as universities and libraries, which is called philanthropy, one of your terms. Okay. Now, to explain this massive accumulation of wealth and the success of so few in a society of so many, we develop a new philosophy. All right, some new ideas, and this is social Darwinism. And Carnegie and Rockefeller are proponents of this belief. I guess you need to believe something when you're super rich and the rest of the world around you suffers. What it is they take survival of the fittest, the law of the jungle, and they apply it to society at large. Okay, the rich are rich because they're strong. The poor are weak. The poor are poor because they're weak, and this is it. So it's survival of the fittest as put forward on society. All right, so remember that. Social Darwinism, survival of the fittest. You're poor, it's your fault, you don't try hard enough. Okay? Now, how Uncle Sam or the government responds or doesn't respond to the formation of monopolies and trusts is one of the things we need to know too. And at first, they don't respond. It's laissez-faire, right? The federal government isn't going to do anything. Especially the Republicans in charge early on, under Lincoln. They believe economic growth was the number one priority, all right? So their philosophy is let business grow, invest in them and help them, and hands off, all right? Which is kind of not quite hands off, but not strictly laissez-faire, but don't take the side of the worker, take the side of the business, even so much as allowing for child labor. And really, up until about Teddy Roosevelt, the government only sides with business. Now, eventually, the public's going to get restless and upset, and they're going to demand change. So Congress will use the Interstate Commerce Act and the preamble of the Constitution to promote the general welfare, to justify and explain their actions. And we'll see at first the Sherman Antitrust Act is passed, the first effort. It's designed to break up unfair trusts of industries and the smaller businesses to promote competition and lower prices for consumers. Unfortunately, the first 10 or 15 years it's in effect, it's only used to break up unions because of its bad wording, okay? So Congress tries to take action, but the president has to enforce the law, and there's no president that enforces the Sherman Antitrust Act in a proper fashion. All right. Now the unions, which are workers who band together to get something out of management, the federal government's going to oppose them and almost always support business owners at first, especially because they're going to see unions as a branch of socialism, as an extension of socialism, which is coming out of Germany and Russia, which really is mistrusted at this time. So unions are not going to get any legitimacy from the government. They're going to be looked at suspiciously by the people at large, all right, until at least Teddy Roosevelt, again, in about 1900. So the government, laissez-faire, hands off of business, but kind of squash unions to support industry and make sure that industry grows, all right? So when we look at this industrial age, it's kind of ugly. It's the Gilded Age, because if we just look on the surface, it's all champagne and caviar, it looks great, but if we scratch that surface, we have large numbers of poor and overcrowded cities, filthy cities, all right, that are not doing well. So underneath that fine exterior is a sad state, all right? Though industrialism is necessary, and it does provide for some benefits. We have jobs, we have an expanded economy, we have a railroad, we have Western settlement, we have philanthropy, all right? But for most Americans, it's not much more than a bleak existence, okay? Done.